In every sport, there's always a debate about who is the GOAT. Chess is unique though. An ELO rating system is used that can compare each player's true strength, but that doesn't tell the whole story. And if we strip away the titles and achievement, one world champion's career makes him a standout for the top spot. So stay tuned as we count down through different candidates to answer the question, who is the best chess player of all time? And we bet it's probably not the one you expected. Magnus Carlsen. Just over 32 years ago, in a small town in eastern Norway, Magnus Carlsen was born. His parents had no idea at the time, but their quiet little boy would grow into possibly the greatest chess player of all time. Looking at what he's done over the last almost 2 decades, it's hard to argue against Magnus being the GOAT. He has the highest ELO rating of all time. The ELO system is the best way we have to measure the true skill level of any player. And looking through history, Magnus takes the cake at the top of the table with a peak rating of 2,882. Closest to Magnus was Garry Kasparov at 2,851. Now, 31 rating points might not seem like a huge gap, but it means that Magnus is expected to win almost 20% more of the time against Kasparov than the other way round. Kasparov has described Carlsen as a lethal combination of Fischer and Karpov. But his ELO level isn't even the most impressive thing about Carlsen. In an era that featured 8 of the 10 highest rated players of all time, Magnus has dominated. Since 2011, he's been number 1 in the world and defended his title 5 times. And his game isn't limited to classical. Magnus just clinched both the Rapid and Blitz titles at the World Championships. Magnus has done this at a time when computer-powered calculations and artificial intelligence are giving all players more preparation tools than ever before. His exceptionally rare mistakes make him a nightmare for his opponent. But Magnus's style, if he has one, can be hard to pin down. Some have described him as a universal player who isn't known as an attacking or defending specialist, unlike previous world champions. He has a solid foundation, but has shown that he's ready to throw unexpected openings out to throw off his opponent and sacrifice pieces to get an edge. But if Magnus is better in one area, it's his endgame technique. Going into an endgame with Magnus, even with an advantage, is dangerous territory. He's shown time and time again that he can squeeze a win out of drawish endgames. That's how he once went 125 games without being beaten. But if you ask Magnus, he's not the greatest of all time. In an interview, he once said, Kasparov has 20 years uninterrupted as the world number 1. He must be considered the best in history. Garry Kasparov. As Magnus said, Garry Kasparov is the longest reigning champion in history. For anyone growing up in the 1980s and 90s, he was the undisputed king on the chessboard. He was born in Baku, Azerbaijan, in what was then the Soviet Union. But in a nation obsessed with chess, where the Soviets were the undisputed kings, he still found a way to stand out from his peers. At 7 years old, he was already excelling at chess, and by 10, he was training at 5-time world champion Mikhail Botvinnik's academy to nurture his talent. He came up through the ranks quickly, winning junior national and international championships before debuting with adults and earning himself a provisional rating of 2,595 after just one tournament. But his rapid rise to the top wasn't the most impressive thing about Kasparov. It's what he did once he got there. His career spans virtually uninterrupted domination of 2 decades with a peak rating of 2,851 in 1999, which remains the second highest in history. His style has been compared to Alexander Alekhine for their rigorous calculations and favouring dynamic positions. Kasparov was up against a brilliant positional player as his arch rival, Anatoly Karpov, who he won the World Championship from. But he still managed to dominate. Kasparov prepared opening lines deeper than most of his opponents and used that to turn games aggressive from the outset. His tactics and strategy were unmatched. Kasparov's impact on the chess world makes him one of the biggest figures in the game. Any decent player is familiar with at least one of Kasparov's games because they're so often used for instructional courses. His masterful play of the Sicilian defense Najdorf variation and his deep understanding of the game makes his many books great starting points for young players. In popular media, Kasparov became cemented into popular culture as the first world champion to lose to a computer, IBM's Deep Blue. This was a landmark for computing power and the rise of the machines. He passed the torch to current world champion Magnus Carlsen by coaching him in 2009 and helping him to prepare him for his world championship campaign a few years later. Kasparov has returned from retirement from time to time to see how he would fare against the modern group of players. He finished 8th at the 2017 St. Louis Rapid and Blitz tournament and managed to score a draw against Magnus in 2020, proving that at the ripe old age of 57, he still had it. Up next, why isn't the current rating system a good way of comparing players, and who is the greatest chess player of all time? So don't go anywhere. Why ELO doesn't cut it. If we were simply analysing the highest ranked player of all time, then this would be a pretty short video. Clearly, Magnus has that title, but there are plenty of different factors that go into deciding who is the greatest. Chess is a game of extensive theory. For decades, the Soviets reigned supreme by keeping their vaults of theory and analysis away from the public. Now, anyone has access to chess databases, theoretical courses, and of course, computer analysis. All of these tools give modern players a huge advantage. That's why the average ELO has risen over time, and it's changed the landscape of the game. Theory has become more accurate, so 10 moves into an opening are often still in a player's repertoire. The work done by chess theorists and players gives all of us huge shoulders to stand on. It makes playing openings and known positions more accurate, but can make for boring matches. Hikaru Nakamura and Richard Rappaport caused controversy by drawing in just 36 seconds after entering into the Berlin defense into one of the most famous drawish openings in chess. And there is one player who hated this trend more than any other. He lived for exciting, dynamic and brave chess games, and despite Garry Kasparov's accolades and consistency, his name stands out more than almost anyone else in history. Bobby Fischer. Undeniably one of the most exciting players in the history of chess. Bobby Fischer was a chess-obsessed kid from Brooklyn who grew up to take on the titans of the Soviet Union. He captured the imagination of the public, especially during his 1972 World Championship match against Boris Spassky, becoming the first non-Soviet chess champion since 1937. And you'd be hard-pressed to find a player who doesn't admire Fischer's games. His style was aggressive, unrelenting, and win at all costs. This often meant sacrificing pieces and capitalizing on the initiative. There might be no better game that demonstrates this than when he played Donald Byrne in 1956. At the time, Bobby was only 13 years old. Byrne was no easy opponent. He was the former US champion and considered one of the best in the country. But even he wasn't ready for the onslaught that Fischer shot at him. Byrne had the white pieces and played the Grunfeld, but when he was too slow to develop and castle his king to safety, Fischer pounced with one of the most aggressive attacks chess has ever seen, offering a knight and a bishop, both of which Byrne wisely rejected. But Fischer's queen sacrifice led to a windmill attack that paralyzed Byrne and effectively ended the game. The sequence is one of the most famous in chess, and the game has even been dubbed the game of the century. As impressive as this game is, it was only the beginning of Fischer's career. The following year, he was the US chess champion, and a little over a decade later, he would be the best in the world. Fischer was known for his outspoken opinions, demanding personality, and later descent into madness. But to the chess world, he remains a strong favourite for the greatest of all time. His comfort and enthusiasm for playing unusual positions that took players out of book from their preparation led him to develop Chess 960, which is still played today. What has been stunning to watch has been the evolution of chess engines. After decades of development, the strongest computing powers in the chess world have moved away from endgames and towards sacrificing pieces. It may have taken this long for technology to catch up to Bobby Fischer's style of play. Tragically for chess, Fischer struggled with personal problems, refused to defend his world championship, and retreated away from public life. The saddest part is that Fischer would have produced even greater games if he continued his career. But the catalogue of masterpieces he left with us is enough to consider him the greatest of all time, breaking theory and defying chess principles to defeat the best of the best. So, do you agree that Bobby Fischer is the greatest player of all time, or is it someone else? Let us know in the comments down below. Also, we'll be doing something very special for one of our subscribers when we reach 1,000, so do subscribe if you want to be the special one, but most importantly, if you love getting to know your favourite chess players, as we're devoted to make Chessier your go-to spot for all your chess entertainment and education. So, until next time, Grandmasters, and by the way, the next video will be a huge one, so see you there.